focus on like lettuce and herbs mainly. You could also probably start flowers if you wanted to. All right, so no tomatoes, no beets, no potatoes and stuff. All right, now the very first thing I do when I start any seed, whether it's for hydroponics or just in regular potting soil, is I start them in a container that has saran wrap or some kind of a lid on it. And I get the seeds really wet, and then I put the saran wrap over it, and basically it acts like a greenhouse and traps the condensation and keeps everything moist. I've seen people who try to mist it all the time and keep it moist, but really the best thing is just to create a little greenhouse that has its own moisture. And here we are growing things in what's called net pots. All right. So this is something you use in hydroponics so that the water can get into the root zone of the plants. Eventually the roots will come out the bottom. This is for one particular hydroponic system I'm going to show you today. And then for the cheap version, I'm just using regular old drinking cups, and I poke some holes in the bottom. All right. And this is just aquarium gravel. All right. You can use different substrates. You can use gravel. You can use perlite. You can use rice hulls. You can use coconut core. You can use those little clay pellets. I've done marble chips. I've just tried a lot of everything just to see what works. But the point is, you don't have to spend a lot of money on a kit. You can actually make your own. So you can actually just use an old aquarium. If you have an old aquarium, you're good to go. All right. So I start everything in here because before there's roots hanging out in the water, there's no sense in having the hydroponic system all going because it's just going to sit there and grow algae. So when it's just a seedling, I just start it in something like this. And then when the roots actually start growing, then I transfer it to the hydroponic system. But if you start it all in the hydroponic system, then you're just going to be fighting algae that much longer. Okay. So you can buy the ready-made kits, and we'll see one of those. But if you just have an old aquarium or a storage tub and you want to do the floating method, all right, all you need is, like, this is packing styrofoam from a TV we got a while back. And I've also found this is kind of like that Oasis foam. And all you have to do is cut a piece of styrofoam to fit your container. And then depending on what kind of cup you're using, and I've used solo cups, I've used all kinds of cups. I just cut a hole that these will fit into. Make sure you put holes in the bottom. But to make sure they're the right size, I trace it with the Sharpie around that. And then I trace the bottom with the Sharpie, and then I cut in between the two lines so it goes through, but not all the way. All right. And so then you have something that'll float on the water, and you don't have to worry about keeping the level of the water all the way up, which I'll show you in one of those expensive kits. So homemade is actually a lot easier, I think, but we'll show both systems so you can decide. All right, so another thing you could use besides aquarium gravel, these little Jiffy peat pellets, you could use those, or I like to use coconut core. It's compressed, basically the little hairy stuff in the middle of the coconut, above the seed but below the husk. So they take that and they can make it like really compact. So when you add water, it expands. And one place to get that real cheap is to go to like Petco or some other pet store. And for reptile substrate, they have these little compressed bricks, and they actually fill up a 5-gallon bucket when you rehydrate them. So that's a really cheap place to get it if you don't want to order it online. I used to teach high school, so I'm used to doing things for nothing. All right. You also have these clay pebbles that are in some garden stores. Okay. And if you're going to use those, or if you're going to use aquarium gravel, you should soak it and then drain the water, because it'll make the water real cloudy the first time you go to use them. All right. Basically, all you need for this is a container. So I have bought a storage container that I've used for some of these, and then just to show you, an old aquarium will work. All right. So all you have to have is basically a floating piece of styrofoam and some cups, and then you can use the gravel from the aquarium, You can use the old pump from the aquarium. And so if you already have an old aquarium, you're pretty much ready to go. So when you're setting this up, these are air stones, all right? When they get hooked up to aquarium tubing, you put these in the bottom of the aquarium and they start bubbling. And I have several in action that we'll see, but this is what it looks like when you buy it. And you can buy different lengths. So there's 3 different lengths right there. And if you have a really tiny system, you can actually use one of these little tiny air stones. So it depends on how big your kit setup is as to how big of a stone you need. But generally I use one of the longer ones. And you will have to pull it out every once in a while and scrub algae off of it. That's just a fact of life with hydroponics. You get an aquarium pump and that you get them for different sizes. This one is 5 to 15 gallons. And this aquarium stuff you can get at Walmart or any pet store, or you can get it online. I just got mine at Walmart because it's cheap. And that's a 5 to 15 gallon pump. So it's good if you have an aquarium. But if you have an aquarium, you probably already have a pump. So that's all that matters. You can get airline tubing anywhere you get your aquarium supplies. So you end up cutting it. And one end goes toward the pump. All right, so you're going to have a piece that comes and attaches here. And then you're going to have this little valve that comes with it, which is important because you attach a tubing from here to here and then from here to the air stone. And that just prevents backflow in case the pump stops. It won't siphon backwards into electrical outlets and such. So basically just get a length and you can cut it to fit. So depending on where your pump is and how far away your hydroponics are, you can use whatever length fits. All right, so we got the water. This is an example. We got the water in there. All right, before we add the pump, before we add the plants, I'm gonna get the chemistry right on the water because it's easier to do without everything in it. All right, so these plants are sitting in water. They still need fertilizer. We're just gonna use a water soluble kind of fertilizer. It doesn't matter, you can use whatever. I just use basic, like off the shelf Miracle-Gro. Now the 2 main components you need to monitor every day is pH and electrical conductivity. And basically EC, electrical conductivity, is a measure of the amount of salts in the water. And so the more fertilizer you have, the higher the number is gonna be. Now, if you look back at your fact sheets, every different kind of plant has a different range of what it likes for electrical conductivity and pH. So here's a table that shows the different kinds of plants and what their EC values and what their pH values should be. And so you can see for basil, which is one thing I grew, it likes EC between 1 to 1.6, and pH, it needs it to be 5.5 to 6. That's fine, no problem. If you want to grow other things at the same time, you probably don't want to grow something that's got a wildly different EC or pH ratio, because then you'll be trying to like do 2 separate things in one container, and that's not going to work. So either find compatible things or just grow one thing. So we're going to go with basil. All right, so it likes pH 5.5 to 6 and EC 1 to 1.6. So this is an EC pH meter. I got this for like 40 bucks on Amazon. All right, so it measures pH and it measures EC. So I'm going to turn it on. And we're going to start with pH. And we're going to see just what this water straight out of the tap, what its pH is. Wow, really? Let me stir it around a little bit more. The fact sheet number is HLA 6722. So what do we got on pH? 7 point what? 67. 7.67. Okay, so it needs to go down. But when we add the fertilizer, it's going to mess with the EC and the pH values. All right. So we'll see what happens when we add fertilizer. All right. So this is just basic fertilizer. And I just use a cheap slice water to stir it because why not? I don't want to use anything I'm going to eat off of later. All right. So we're just going to dissolve that. And we'll see what happens with our pH and EC values. Now, while you're growing these things, as the water evaporates and the plants use the water and the plants use the nutrients, these values are going to change every day. And as you add more water and more fertilizer, it's going to mess with both pH and EC. So your job is to find the happy medium where you can keep both values where they need to be. All right, so let's see what happens. Oh, darn it, I forgot to do EC, but it was like 0.0002 if it's just plain tap water. All right, so electroconductivity. Oh, let's just do pH first. pH was a 7.7 something. All right, let's see what it is now. What is it now? It's 6.76. All right, so you can see that it went down when I added the fertilizer. 615. 615. Okay, now let's see what the EC values are. All right. All right. 2.16. So it wants there to be less fertilizer on this. All right, but and the pH is what again? 6.1 something. Okay. It can use pH. It can go down a little bit on the pH. All right. So this has a lot of fertilizer. All right. So we could. What would we add to make this EC go down? Water. Very good, Donna. We could add water, but what would also change if we added water? pH, right? All right. Now, you just mess with adding water, adding fertilizer until you get the happy medium. Let's say that you had, for some weird reason, pH 9, all right? And you needed to get it down. They actually make this stuff called pH down. They also make pH up. And you can get a gallon of this for like $7. Although if I was really off, I would just pour it out and start over. So let's see what happens when we add a little bit of pH down. So it was like 6.16 or something. All right. It doesn't take much. So I'm just going to add, actually, that's probably too much, but we'll see. Again, make sure you stir it so it's uniform before you test it again. This is a really handy fly swatter. All right. Let's see what the pH is now. This will be interesting. All right, what's the pH now? 2.85. I told you it doesn't take much. So at this point, if I had pH up, I'd use it, but I'd probably just throw this water out and start over. Now, what was I going to say? Oh, the reason we use pH down and up, I tried using stuff like citric acid, like I tried real lemon and real lime and all kinds of stuff to see if I could lower it without having to buy this stuff. And it would go down, but it wouldn't stay down. So it wasn't very stable. But this pH up and down is stable. So it's not like you put it in there and then you have to put more in and put more in. It'll stay for a while. So you don't have to worry about it so much. All right, now, who cares about pH? Why does pH matter? All right, well, when you're growing plants, every plant has a different kind of pH that it likes to be at. And this is a chart of the different elements that plants need to grow. All right. And the wide space, the space that is white, is at what pH level the plant will take up that element. So if you're way over here, notice that if you're pH 4, there's not many nutrients that are going to be taken up by plants. So even if the nutrients are in either the soil or the potting soil or the water, whatever it's in, you can have tons of these nutrients, but the plant's not going to take any up. All right. And you notice when you get to neutral pH, most of those elements are available to the plant. So that's why pH is important. If the pH is off, the plant can't absorb the nutrients even if they're there. All right. So that's why pH is important. If you don't want to buy, wherever it went, if you don't want to buy one of these, all right, you can also use old school. This is pH paper, and it comes in a roll, and you just take a piece out. All right. Then you're going to dip it in, and then this is the color chart you can read to see what the pH is. Now, when we added that pH down, it was like a 2 something. So let's see. All right. So, yeah, this says it's about the pH 3, 3.5. So, I mean, it's not like 100% precise, but it gets the fact across that the pH is too low. All right. So if you get one of these rolls of paper, it'll last a long time, but it does need to be protected from like light and moisture. So if it was me, I would just bite the bullet and buy one of these for like 40 bucks. All right. So again, this is just to show you, you can use this old aquarium as a hydroponic. Okay. So when you're growing plants, of course, you need a light source. This one, again, is from Walmart. All right. It was about 20 bucks and it's 5,000 K. And I've been using this obviously the plants like it. All right. These have actually been going on for several months and I've redone them several months. So this isn't like what it would look like if you had just planted it like a month or so ago. But I've had to do this presentation a lot, so I just kept it going. So this looks like a mess, but anyway, this is dill. We also have some basil and we have some microgreens that obviously I let get macro. All right. But these are the little net pots. All right. So, and you can see the roots have come all the way out of the net pot. But with the air source in the container, they still, even though they're in water, they still get enough air to respire because plants do photosynthesis to make sugar. But when they're actively growing or reproducing, and whenever they're using energy, they do respiration like we do. So when they're doing photosynthesis, they take in carbon dioxide and water and they make sugars. And then when they're actively growing, they take those sugars and oxygen and use it for energy. So that's what we do. Whenever we're using energy, we take the sugar we ate and oxygen, and we're able to expend energy. So they do both. All right. So they need oxygen and they also need carbon dioxide. So if you look at, this is one of those kits, it was $100. All right. So if you look underneath, you can see all the roots and you can see the hydroponic solution that they're in. And every day I have to keep adding more water because the plants use it. Some of it evaporates, but most of the plants are taking it up. And when I first start, I have to make sure the water level is pretty high. That's one reason that I start these things not in hydroponics. And that way I don't have to fill it to the brim just so the roots can get to the water. Right. So that's like the $100 system. This is basically the aquarium version. All right. So this one, I just took some of that packing material. This is perlite. All right. This is algae. This is one thing you have to deal with in these systems. But I just cut. You can still see even where I drew the line around the top of the cup. And then these just sit right in it. And then if I want to grow something else later, I can just punch holes in new cups. All right. This is those clay pebbles. All right, so they just fall down in there, and you can probably see underneath there should be some roots. Really not much. And they must be in the, they must still be, here, let me pull up this. There. You see them? All right. So they haven't grown long enough to come out of the bottoms, which actually makes it easier to take out and deal with. Now, like I said, one thing you have to worry about with hydroponics is if you add fertilizer to anything, the algae is going to be happy too. So this is why they took phosphorus out of laundry detergents, because when you have laundry detergent that has phosphorus, it's a nutrient that algae likes, and when it would go down the drain after you finish doing your laundry, eventually all water ends up in the ocean, and along the way it goes into creeks and rivers and lakes. Well, you've got all that phosphorus in there, and that was just fertilizing algae, and that's a problem called eutrophication. So you fertilize all this algae, and the algae is just going crazy, and then when the algae dies, the bacteria that decomposes it uses up all the oxygen in the water, and then the fish die because they need oxygen in the water, and the bacteria are using all the oxygen to decompose the algae. So basically you're killing a water source, when you use nutrients. So anyway, these nutrients obviously aren't going anywhere, but it's the same problem. The algae is happy, all right? And algae spores are just like floating in the air everywhere. So it's not like you can grow in an environment without algae unless you're in some kind of sterile environment. So once in a while, when the algae is growing all along the tank and all over the airline and stuff, once a week or so, I just take everything apart and I scrub everything and I put it back in. So, it's a fun, novel thing, but you do have the algae to worry about. One thing you can do to prevent the algae or slow it down is you can put black construction paper or something around the outside so that the sun doesn't get in from the sides. But then again, or you can use an opaque storage container. So if it was like black or something. But if you use like a black storage container with the lid, you won't have as much algae problem, but you'll have to always be opening it to see where the water level is and to make sure that the roots are getting it. You can also set it up like this, where you have cups in the lid of the container, but then you have to make sure the water level's high enough every day. So not be able to see what's going on, less algae, be able to see what's going on, more algae. So it's kind of like, all right. So the main important parts is you have a container for the whole system, and you can use a storage container, aquarium, or you can shell out $100 for a storage tub that already has holes cut in it. All right. You can buy all these components separately. So if you wanted to still have net pots, but do your own styrofoam, they come in different sizes. And so there's even hydroponic stores that sell like however many net pots you want. So you can still make one that, looks pretty if you're into that, or you can just use plastic cups. Now, on a budget of $0, I use plastic cups. Actually, I go get aquariums because like every school has an aquarium that nobody's using. And so I just tell the teachers, go get it. And now you've gone from old aquarium sitting there not getting used to, hey, hydroponics, cool. So that's the basics of hydroponics. Like gone over everything? I guess so.
Is that all? Is that it?
I guess so. Well, this is like
Okay.
101. I'm not going into 201 or 301 yet. So.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Just want to make sure you were done.
I think 101 is done.
Okay. All right. So
Finally.
Thank you. Let's open it up then for some questions and see what we got. So Dennis put the soil dispersing agent sodium hexametaphosphate was the phosphorus source replaced in detergents during the 1970s through the 80s. Maybe I missed it, but are there any darkening agents you can use on the container to reduce light going to the fertilizer solution so as to reduce algae?
Yeah, just like black construction paper or use an opaque storage container. That's about what you can. And if you have it to where only this is visible to the light, you know, and nothing gets past it, then you won't have as much of a problem with algae. But even still, on top, I mean, it's really hard to not have algae. I've never seen a hydroponic system personally that doesn't have an algae problem at some point.
You know, they use dyes in the ponds, you know, like Theta Pond, to help reduce algae. I wonder if you could do a dye in your solution and help reduce algae as well. I don't know.
Remember, this is food. You're going to be eating it. So
True.
Whatever's in the solution's coming into the plant. So if
That's
it's like
true.
causing cancer or something, then that's on you.
Well, I don't know what the dyes are made out of, so that's a good thought though.
I mean, I guess you could try like dumping a whole lot of food coloring in there maybe, but that's not cheap. It's cheaper just to dump it out and scrub it every week.
We've got a couple things.
Okay, tell us about some of the things you have grown. What are the plants you have had the best results with? What might be the most rewarding for a home hobbyist?
I pretty much have grown herbs and like lettuce, like leaf lettuce that I can harvest and eat. So you can see that dill was happy, basil's happy. I made sure that I didn't give these too much fertilizer because I didn't want to clean all the algae. So they're kind of stunted, but that was on purpose. All right. And you got, oh, what else have I tried? Rosemary, thyme, mint. See, I don't like too many vegetables, so you're asking the wrong person. But when I was doing this in urban horticulture, I audited that class, and we had a huge Dutch bucket system, which was like a 5-gallon container, 5-gallon containers all the way down, and then there was a pipe, and so we had a pump that would push the water and nutrients up and drip it through the 5-gallon buckets, and then whatever came out would go down the pipe into a reservoir, and then it would get pumped back up again. And we had a lot of greenhouse space, so we were growing like tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff like that. But if you have a greenhouse at home, that's feasible. But if you're doing this in your kitchen, and especially things that are fruiting need like 6 to 8 hours of good sunlight. So I don't know if you could have enough light in a house really to grow something that was going to fruit much.
I was going to say strawberries are often done in a hydroponic system, but you would have to have a greenhouse type situation where it was really bright light.
Yeah. And I've seen where they take, so there's different kinds of techniques of hydroponics. There's the one where they're floating kind of like this. There's one where they have a Dutch bucket system where the water's continuously going by. Then there's aeroponics, which basically keeps the roots constantly misted. So there's different kinds of systems. You know, this is like the easiest, but depending on what you want to, depending on how techy you want to get and how much time you want to put into this, you could go, sky's the limit.
Right. What is the best light to use?
I just use 5000K and everything seems to have been happy. I mean, we've grown in my light box at home, we have like a grow tent, and we have grown bell peppers, and we have grown strawberries and onions and carrots and radishes, and that's all under this 5000K light. And we had some pretty big bell peppers and stuff. So another thing that's cool to do is whenever we get our produce, we save like the seeds from inside bell peppers, or we save like seeds from inside tomatoes, and we use those. So you actually could just go to Walmart, get some like produce, like cucumbers and stuff, and use those seeds. So you don't even have to like spend $5 for 10 seeds or anything.
When you say 5000K, are you talking about a fluorescent light bulb that's being used in that, I guess?
Yeah, it's like,
or is that what that system is called? Is that LED?
Yeah, this is an LED.
Oh, okay. Blinding Donna.
So it's cool. So you can touch it and it's not going to burn you and stuff.
Okay, so that's an LED source. Okay, and you found that at Walmart?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I try to find stuff like so that anybody can replicate this for as cheap as humanly possible, because I'm not into paying like $200 for a kit. You know,
right.
Like they have those little cute here's a little thing of herbs growing under its own little lamp. And that's like a couple $100. It's like, man, for free, you can rig your own and have more stuff growing. So I'm all into the cheap and, you know, shoestring stuff.
Yeah. Debbie said, tell us about doing microgreens, and can't you use it outside in sunlight?
Yeah, you could use this outside in sunlight. I mean, as long as you keep the water level up, because if you ignore it for a few days and it's really hot and the plants are using a lot of water, you're going to have to make sure you're not running out of water, because that's, you know, important.
I would suppose the water could really heat up pretty much too, if it's depending on the container.
Yeah.
I
But
don't
if
know.
you had it like, if you had it like in a light colored opaque box and it wasn't like in the middle of your yard totally baking, it might work. But yeah, the water temperature does heat up faster than soil and stuff. So yeah, you'd have to worry about that.
Just have to, yeah.
I guess you could throw ice cubes in it every once in a while. But that kind of takes the whole like labor saving out of this.
Right. So what do you know about the microgreens?
Oh, the microgreens. So you can't ask me more than one question at a time.
I'm sorry. It was a all-in-one.
So the microgreens, I mean, it's cool because, you know, I put like multiple seeds in each container. Now this is way more crowded than I normally would have, but I just try to, like, you know, the good thing about being an extension is you can say, I screwed up, but I planned it that way. So you can see what happens if you make a mistake. But no, actually I did do this on purpose. But, you know, with the microgreens, some of these are microgreens and you just go in there and, you know, pick a leaf off and eat it, you know. Vitamins. But yeah, you got dill and all kinds of stuff. Basil I've had extreme success with. I mean, I don't consider myself a green thumb, but that stuff will go crazy and you'll always have it.
Have you tried spinach?
Spinach? Leaf spinach probably would be fine with this, like leaf lettuce. I wouldn't try to growing a whole head of it unless I had some honking huge, like 8-inch pot sunken into a hydroponic system. But at that point, just plant it in the ground.
Dennis had the same question I had. Have you dabbled in the aquaculture yet?
No, I don't want to do the fish thing because they had talked about even more water chemistry. You got the pH, you got the EC, but you don't want to kill the fish. I don't even eat seafood, so I really don't even care.
You could have gold, but the gold, you could have goldfish or whatever to help keep the algae clean, you know, down, right?
Yeah, but you know, they say, oh, the fish poop fertilizes the plants, and then the plants, you know, have stuff for the fish, but that's too many things to juggle at once.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not going to grow tilapia and eat them or force your kid to eat them, what is the point? I mean, you know, I can put goldfish in a bowl and it's a whole lot easier than trying to figure out all the chemistry between the plants and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you'd probably have to worry about what fertilizer you were using, because I'm sure fish have, you know, needs that some things would kill them. So
there's a comment. It says it's a simple concept, but it has a huge learning curve. I agree with that.
I have seen some big systems where we're talking like 500-gallon tanks and huge amount of plants. I mean, if you're going to do, it's kind of like have a swimming pool. Once you get the swimming pool pH and stuff balanced, it's easier to keep it that way. But if you have a little container of water, it's harder to keep the chemistry going because it doesn't stay as stable as long. So if you're going to do this, yeah, 500-gallon tank, stuff like that, sure. But
yeah,
in this little thing, you'd be messing with it all day. Don't let it
all right. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
If you want to watch this whole presentation again, I did an Oklahoma gardening segment on this, and it's on YouTube. All the Oklahoma gardening episodes are uploaded to YouTube, like right at the same time they're shown, basically. So if you go to YouTube and look up Oklahoma gardening and type my name or type hydroponics, it'll show up, and it's basically the same thing we just went over today, but in like 5 minutes.
Now, I am recording this and streaming it live to YouTube, but I got caught up trying to make sure everything was set up. I forgot to turn it on right at the very beginning. So we missed the first couple of minutes of your introduction, but they'll get the majority of it. So
That's like kind of starting in the middle of a math problem.
we weren't that far in. Okay.
I can't think of anything else really. But yeah,
All right.
if you were gonna volunteer at a school or something, which even if you go once, if you go to a school, you're giving kids more than they probably will ever get in terms of plants, because teachers only cover what's in the kits that they make them use. And a lot of times plants don't get the coverage, and kids seriously don't know where their food comes from. Like even in high school, they don't know where their food comes from. I had a kid give me an orange and not know what it was because she'd only ever seen one that was peeled and pulled apart. So anytime you can go to a school, it's totally awesome, seriously, because most kids don't ever get exposed to this. And if you were wanting to have the wow factor and get them excited, just ask the teacher, do you have an old aquarium? Because most of the time it has a pump, it has the gravel, it has everything you need, and you just cut up some styrofoam and get some cups and voila. So that's the easiest, and it has a wow factor. So the kids, and it's got bubbles. No matter where I take this thing, if I plug it in at a convention or something, everybody's like, "Ooh, bubbles!" So, if you got a kid that's like attention deficit, just sit him in front of this bubbles.
Debbie asked about vines like squash and cantaloupe.
Well, we've had that, but not in this size system. We did that kind of stuff in the big greenhouse using the Dutch bucket system. So we're talking 5-gallon bucket for the roots, and then we've got strings they can grow up and support, so they go up instead of like all over the place. But yeah, you could do it that way if you have a Mongo-sized kitchen or something.
And those are both crops that need lots of bright light as well as warm temperatures for them to be happy usually. So
it really is hard to grow fruiting plants like in artificial light, really. I mean, I've had like for instance, I started a pineapple top. All right, had it in my office for a couple of years. It's kind of like meh. Took it home, put it out in the light, and it just went yes. And it is like really happy now. So yeah, they really like real light. You get away with like not so much good quality light with like herbs, but if it comes to something that's making fruit, besides the fact that you got to have access by pollinators, unless you want to take a paintbrush and go to every single flower. But yeah, it's better. For hydroponics, it's more of a wow factor than a serious. If I was going to seriously grow a lot of basil, I would grow it outside in a container or in a bed. But this is just kind of fun. If you have like kids or grandkids that, ooh, cool, whatever you got to do to get them interested in plants so they know where their food comes from, whatever it takes.
what if you did it in fall or spring when temps are moderate?
Inside or outside?
Which crops are you talking about, Debbie? So the outside, yeah. If you did it outside in the fall or spring, you'd be fine, I think, with the greens. Like in a lot of the herbs, because they don't mind the cooler temperatures. But your fruiting types of crops, they've got to have those warm temperatures to really do well. Yeah, the squash vines, they like warm temperatures.
I suppose you could get really complicated and you could build a hydroponics unit inside a cold frame if you really want to get complicated.
Yeah, or if you have a hobby, or if you have a hobby greenhouse or something.
You'd almost have to. But we could have a contest. Who can grow squash in the middle of December?
Can squash bugs swim? Good question, Debbie. Most likely, yes.
That is one good thing about indoor hydroponics. You don't have near the bugs. Although I have to say, we have a grow tent in our house and we had a huge fungus gnat problem. I mean, we would put those yellow sticky cards in there and by the end of the day, they would be full. So my husband finally just threw everything out, started again, but still, I mean, it's really hard to keep bugs out.
Yeah. You know, that's one way to catch squash bugs too, and other bugs that are crawling on plants is take a bucket of water and put a, you know, put a little soap in it, you know, dish soap. And so you're kind of making an insecticidal soap solution and then knock the bugs off into the bucket. So they can still swim, but that kind of kills them at the same time. So we've done that with, you can spray them with a insecticide, or you can knock them off the plant into a soapy water and kill them too. So we've done that before as a simple, easy way to, somewhat easy, kind of labor intensive, I guess, but easy
Of
way
course,
to
if you're
keep
going to
some of those
spray in your
crawling
house, it's going to make a mess.
Right. So this would be outside probably. How long does it take for lettuce to grow for macrogreens?
It says 2 to 3 days to germinate, 10 to 15 days to harvest, a 1/4 inch apart. So it's almost, it's pretty fast, kind of like radishes only take 3 weeks, but you wouldn't be growing radishes in hydroponics, but it's a quick crop. The good thing is you can, you know, pinch it, put a couple more seeds, you know, keep it going. Just keep it turning over. Then they don't get macro greens. You just harvest them and then plant some more as you harvest. If you get like mint or basil, you just pinch off a leaf and keep going. But yeah, if you just let them go wild, they'll go wild. And this has been going about 2 months. So some of these I pulled out and started over, but this is just a mess because it was just a demo. It's not like I'm actually going to eat this stuff. Actually, it's going to hit the trash in about 10 minutes. But quick, anybody want dill?
Is there another fact sheet reference in addition to HLA 6722?
I think there might be one that's more detailed, but like more grander scale.
Yeah, I know there's lots of information out there from other universities on hydroponics. And Bruce Dunn has done a couple in our department regarding aquaponics and hydroponics and some of that stuff too. So those are also available. I'd have to look them up though. I don't know what they are.
Well, B Who, our new Doctor Who, she HU, she is teaching the urban horticulture class, so she's doing hydroponics too. So you could look her email up and ask her as well.
Okay, I think that's about it. So like to thank Shelley again for her time and expertise and all that fun information that we received for doing some fun. I think this is a great opportunity for master gardeners to, you know, like I say, take it into the schools. Once COVID gets over with, you can.
Hey, and thank Donna too, because she's been holding my iPhone the whole hour and her arm's about to fall off.
Thank you, Donna.
Yay, Donna!
Appreciate that. All right, well, we'll end the meeting and thanks to everybody, and tune in next week because that'll be our last class for the summer, and we'll hopefully see you then. All right, thanks, Shelley.
All right, thanks.
And Donna. All right, bye.